Today's story is so tense it will make your chest tighten. Set deep in the wild American West, where the line between safety and captivity is thinner than a locked door. This is a place where strangers smile politely, but every hallway hides a threat, and every choice comes at a terrible price. It began with one small decision: choosing to stay the night. An innocent act that slowly revealed a trap designed to strip people of their will and leave them hollow inside. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The wind screamed across the Kansas prairie like a wounded beast, hurling sheets of rain straight into Vera Langford's face. Beneath her, Ashwind faltered again, hooves sliding in the churned mud, head drooping low as her flanks shuddered with exhaustion. They had been riding since first light, pushing hard to stay ahead of the storm that had overtaken them nearly 20 miles from the nearest town. Vera tugged her oilskin tighter around her shoulders, though it offered little protection. The rain had soaked through long ago, biting deep into her bones with a cold that felt personal. Her fingers, stiff and numb, struggled to keep hold of the reins. She squinted through the downpour, scanning the horizon for anything that might pass for shelter. The prairie rolled on without mercy, grass crushed flat beneath the wind, offering nothing but open exposure. Then she saw it. A dark silhouette rose from the land like a lone vessel on a violent sea. A house? No. Something more substantial than that. It stood 2 stories high, painted white though the paint had long begun to peel. A wide porch wrapped around its front, and a thin ribbon of smoke slipped from the chimney, barely visible against the iron-gray sky. As Vera urged Ashwind forward, a wooden sign came into view, swinging wildly in the wind. Faded black letters. Red beneath them: Mrs. Graythorne's boarding house, hospitality and shelter for weary travelers. Relief washed through her, sharp and immediate. She had heard of places like this, frontier boarding houses run by widows or unmarried women, scattered far between towns, respectable stops, clean beds, hot meals, a refuge for those caught by weather or distance. The prices were usually fair, and more importantly, they were considered safe, especially for a woman traveling alone. Vera guided Ashwind toward the small stable beside the house. Its door swung open, slamming against the frame with every gust. Inside, 3 stalls were already occupied, each holding a well-fed, well-groomed horse. She noted it with quiet approval. At least the woman who ran this place cared for her guests' animals. She worked quickly to unsaddle Ashwind, her frozen fingers clumsy against the buckles. The mare nickered softly as Vera rubbed her down with a fistful of straw, clearly grateful to be out of the storm. Fresh hay filled the empty stall, and Vera topped off a bucket from the water barrel in the corner. "Easy now, girl," she murmured, patting the mare's neck. "You'll be warm and dry tonight." Grabbing her saddlebags and rifle, Vera dashed through the rain toward the front porch. She paused at the door, suddenly aware of herself. Her riding skirt was split and smeared with mud. Damp strands of hair clung to her face beneath her hat. And she likely smelled of wet leather and horse sweat. Still, a frontier boarding house had surely seen worse. She knocked firmly. The door opened almost at once, as though someone had been watching her approach. The woman standing there looked to be around 50. Steel-gray hair was pulled tight into a severe bun. She wore a high-collared black dress with long sleeves, widow's mourning clothes, faded and worn by years of use. Her face might once have been handsome, but time and prairie hardship had carved deep lines around her mouth and eyes. Those eyes unsettled Vera the most. They were the palest blue she had ever seen, cold, sharp, like winter ice. "Well now," the woman said, her voice carrying a peculiar cadence. "Another traveler caught in the Lord's temper. Come in, child, before you freeze where you stand." Vera stepped into a lamplit hallway, and the warmth struck her so suddenly it made her shiver harder as her body realized just how cold it had been. The smell of cooking meat, beef stew, perhaps, and fresh bread filled the air, making her stomach tighten with hunger. "Thank you, ma'am," Vera said. "I'm Vera Langford, headed for Dodge City. The storm took me by surprise." "Storms do that out here?" the woman replied. She shut the door and turned the heavy lock. "I'm Morna Graythorne. This is my house." Her pale gaze swept over Vera from head to toe. Muddy boots, soaked coat, battered hat, assessing her the way one might judge a horse at auction. Vera felt the scrutiny settle uncomfortably on her skin. "You'll be wanting a hot meal and a warm bed," Morna said. "That much is clear." "Yes, ma'am, I can pay." Vera reached for the purse at her belt, but Morna waved her off. "We'll speak of payment after you've eaten. No sense letting you drip all over my clean floors. Come along." She led Vera down the corridor, past closed doors and faded photographs lining the walls. The house seemed larger inside than it had from the outside, its rooms branching in unexpected directions. Everything was tidy but worn, carrying the feel of careful upkeep stretched thin. They entered a dining room dominated by a long oak table. 3 men sat at one end, eating in complete silence. They looked up as Vera stepped inside, and something about them made her slow. All 3 were well-dressed. Too well, considering how remote this place was. One, perhaps in his 40s with thinning brown hair, wore a suit that might have been fashionable back east. Another, younger man sat beside him, similarly neat in appearance. Yet despite their differences, they all shared the same hollow look in their eyes. And that was when Vera felt it. Something here was wrong. The second man, sporting a neatly trimmed beard, wore a brocade vest fastened tight over a crisp shirt, a silk cravat knotted at his throat like he still belonged in some Eastern parlor. The third looked barely past 20. A gold watch chain stretched across his waistcoat, catching the lamplight. Yet it wasn't their clothes that made Vera Langford hesitate. It was their faces. Though different in age and build, all 3 carried the same hollow stare, as if something essential had been scraped clean from the inside. Their eyes fixed on her with an unsettling mix of emotions she couldn't fully name. Hope tangled with fear, laced with warning. "Gentlemen," Morna Graythorne said smoothly, "this is Miss Vera Langford. She'll be dining with us tonight." The men inclined their heads together, moving as one, but none of them spoke. They returned to their plates, though Vera noticed they barely seemed aware of the food. Forks rose and fell in stiff, practiced motions, like machines going through memorized steps. "Sit here, child," Morna said, pulling out a chair. "I'll bring you something hot." She vanished through a side door, likely the kitchen, leaving Vera alone with the strange trio. Vera removed her soaked hat and smoothed her damp hair as best she could. The silence pressed down hard, broken only by rain battering the windows and the faint clink of cutlery against china. "Evenin'," Vera offered quietly. The youngest man began to speak, but the bearded one struck his boot beneath the table. The sound was soft, but the message was clear. All 3 dropped their eyes to their plates. Moments later, Morna returned carrying a tray. She set down a steaming bowl of thick stew, a slab of cornbread, and a cup of coffee so hot it breathed white mist into the air. The scent alone made Vera's mouth ache with hunger. "Eat," Morna said, settling into the chair at the head of the table. "You'll need the strength." Vera didn't argue. She dug in, hunger sweeping manners aside. The stew was rich with beef and vegetables, the cornbread sweet and dense, the coffee bitter but warming her clear through. As she ate, she felt it. that steady pressure of being watched. Morna hadn't touched her own meal. She sat with her hands folded, pale eyes never leaving Vera's face. "You're traveling alone," Morna said at last. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am," Vera replied. "My aunt in Dodge City's taken ill. I'm all she's got left." "That's a dangerous thing for a woman," Morna said calmly. "The prairie's full of trouble." Vera's hand brushed the Colt at her hip. "I can look after myself." Morna smiled, but it stopped short of her eyes. "I'm sure you can. Still, this storm may be a blessing in disguise. You're safe here tonight." Something in the way she said safe sent a chill crawling up Vera's spine. She glanced at the men again. Their plates were empty now. They sat with their hands folded in their laps, staring at nothing. "Your other guests," Vera said carefully. "They headed far?" Morna's smile sharpened. "Oh, they're not headed anywhere. They're staying here, long term. Isn't that right, gentlemen?" The men nodded again, slow, synchronized, unsettling. Morna rose suddenly from her chair. "Now then, Miss Langford," she said, smoothing her skirts, "about your sleeping arrangements. I run my house a particular way. There's a rule." Vera set down her coffee. "What kind of rule?" Morna crossed the room toward the deepest corner, where the lamplight failed to reach. Vera heard metal shift, iron scraping against iron, before she saw the source. Her breath caught. A man sat on the floor, his back against the wall. No, not just a man, an Apache warrior. He was enormous, well over 6 feet, shoulders broad as a draft horse. Long black hair fell loose around a face, hard and dark, like it had been cut from stone. What remained of his traditional clothing clung to him: leather leggings, a torn shirt exposing powerful muscle marked by old scars. Heavy iron shackles locked his wrists and ankles, chains anchored to a ring bolt sunk deep into the floor. Yet even bound like an animal, his dark eyes burned with something unbroken: fury, pride. When his gaze met Vera's, she saw more than rage. She saw awareness. "This," Morna said lightly, "is one of my permanent residents." "A savage," she continued. "I've been trying to civilize. Progress takes time." Vera's hand moved instinctively toward her gun. "You keep a man chained like livestock." Morna waved it off. "He's dangerous. Killed 3 men before he was captured. The territorial marshal planned to hang him, but I intervened." She tilted her head. "I believe in redemption, don't you?" The warrior's jaw tightened, but he did not move. Morna returned to the table, skirts whispering. "Now, my rule. You see, I offer more than food and a roof. I offer protection, companionship. A woman alone requires guarding in uncertain times." Vera rose slowly to her feet, the meal sitting heavy in her gut. "I don't follow." Morna smiled again. "It's simple," she said softly. Morna Graythorne swept one hand toward the men seated at the table, and then toward the chained Apache in the shadows. "Choose," she said calmly. "Pick a man. He'll be yours for the night." Vera Langford's fingers tightened around the grip of her pistol. "I'm sorry?" she said. Morna's smile remained fixed, but a hard glint flashed behind those pale eyes. Now, no need for that look." "This is a simple understanding, child. You select one of these gentlemen to share your room. For protection," she added lightly. "The prairie isn't kind. Drifters, outlaws, savages. A woman alone is exposed." "I can handle myself," Vera said flatly. "I only need a bed. I'll pay double for privacy." The men at the table shifted, unease rippling through them. The youngest opened his mouth again, only to be stopped by a sharp movement from the bearded man beside him. Morna stepped closer. Vera caught the faint scent of something sharp and medicinal, laudanum, perhaps, or something stronger. "I'm afraid my house doesn't operate that way," Morna said softly. "Rules are rules. Either you choose a companion, or you step back out into the storm. Though I wouldn't advise it. The nearest town is 20 miles. She let the threat settle. Outside, the wind shrieked louder, rattling the window panes in their frames. Vera knew Ashwind wouldn't survive another mile, certainly not 20. "This is madness," Vera said. "You can't force me." "Force?" Morna arched a brow. "My dear girl, I'm not forcing anything. I'm merely explaining the conditions of my hospitality. You're free to leave whenever you like." Vera looked back at the men. Their empty eyes stared through her. Yet now she noticed something beneath the blankness. The man in the middle, bearded, tense, met her gaze. His lips moved. Silent words she couldn't quite make out. "These men," Vera said slowly. "They're guests here?" "Oh yes," Morna replied smoothly. She gestured to the older man with thinning hair. "That's Harlan Voss, a businessman out of Chicago." She nodded to the bearded man. "Orrin Blackridge, cattle trade. And young Micah Rowell," she finished, "studying medicine, all respectable men, all appreciative of what I provide." None of them corrected her. None added a word. They sat there like dressed mannequins, waiting. Vera's gaze drifted back to the Apache in the corner. Up close, the details struck harder, the proud angle of his jaw, the way muscle bunched beneath scarred skin as he shifted against the chains. His dark eyes burned with intelligence, steady and alert. He watched her, not pleading, not hostile. And for just a heartbeat, Vera thought she saw respect. "And him?" Vera asked. Morna's smile sharpened into something cruel. "Surely you're not considering that one. He's a savage, a killer. I keep him as a reminder of what happens to those who reject civilization." "Does he have a name?" Vera asked. "They called him Joseph at the reservation school," Morna said dismissively. "Though I doubt he answers to it. Their true names are barbaric things, impossible to say. He hasn't spoken once since I acquired him." Vera studied the chained warrior. Despite the iron binding his limbs, he held himself with unmistakable dignity. When his eyes met hers, she didn't see the beast Morna described. She saw a man. A man stripped of freedom, but not of will. "How long have they been here?" Vera asked quietly. Morna's answer came easy. "Time behaves differently out here. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. My gentlemen come and go as they please." The lie slid out smooth as polished glass. "You look exhausted," Morna added. "Make your choice so we can get you settled." Vera's thoughts raced. Every instinct screamed danger, told her to run. But the storm sealed the doors, and something told her that leaving now would invite something far worse. She needed time. "If I'm to choose," Vera said carefully, "I need to understand my options. May I speak with them?" Morna's eyes narrowed, just slightly, before she nodded. "Of course." She turned to the table. "Gentlemen, Miss Langford wishes a word. Do be accommodating." Vera stepped toward them, her boots sounding loud against the wooden floor. And every pair of hollow eyes followed her. Harlan Voss, the businessman, lifted his eyes to Vera Langford with the look of a beaten hound. From this close, she could see the fine fabric of his suit, once expensive, now marked by careful patches and worn seams, as though he had been trapped inside it for far too long. "Mr. Voss," Vera said quietly, lowering her voice. "How long have you been staying here?" His lips moved without sound at first. Then words came, broken and uncertain. The railroad. I was heading west, San Francisco." His voice faded, as if the thought had slipped out of reach halfway through. Suddenly, Orrin Blackridge, the cattleman, seized Vera's wrist. His grip was icy, desperate. "Choose carefully," he whispered. "Some choices won't get you killed." Before she could respond, Morna Graythorn cleared her throat sharply. Orrin released Vera's arm as if it had burned him. Micah Rowell, the youngest, kept his eyes fixed on his plate. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I wanted to help people," he muttered to no one in particular. "I was going to be a doctor. Heal folks." Vera stepped back from the table, unease crawling through her chest. These men weren't guests. They were captives, bound without chains. Something had hollowed them out, stripped away their will, and left only fragments behind. She turned toward the Apache. Morna made a soft, irritated sound, but did not stop her. The warrior watched Vera approach, his body tightening. Up close, she saw old scars layered over newer bruises. The iron shackles had rubbed his wrists raw, flesh angry and torn. Yet his eyes, dark, sharp, burned with a fire the others no longer possessed. Alive in a way the men at the table were not. "I'm sorry," Vera said softly. "No one deserves this." A flicker crossed his face. Surprise, perhaps. His lips parted as if he might speak. Then his gaze slid to Morna. He closed his mouth again, expression sealing shut. "Touching," Morna said coldly, "but pointless. He's beyond saving. And now, Miss Langford, the hour is getting late." Vera turned to face her. "What happens if I choose? What exactly are you offering?" "You'll be taken to a comfortable room," Morna replied. "You'll rest safely until morning. Your chosen companion will ensure no harm comes to you. After breakfast, you'll be free to continue on your way." "And if I refuse?" Morna's smile vanished. "Then you leave, immediately, into the storm. And I'll inform the territorial marshal that a woman matching your description was seen consorting with known outlaws." She let that sit. Such rumors can make travel complicated, especially for a woman alone. The threat was unmistakable. Vera felt the walls closing in. She took in the room, the broken men at the table, the chained warrior, the windows black with rain and wind. The answers were here, somewhere, but she wouldn't find them by rushing. "I need a moment," Vera said. "Of course," Morna replied smoothly. "But not too long. My patience wears thin." Vera walked to the window, pretending to study the storm while her mind raced. She could choose one of the three men. In their ruined state, they posed little danger. But the way they tried to warn her, their silence, their urgency, told her they knew things they couldn't say aloud. Or she could choose the Apache. Morna clearly didn't expect that. In fact, she seemed to be counting on Vera's fear to rule him out entirely. Yet he was the only one in the room who still looked whole. When Vera turned back, all eyes were on her. The three men watched with a mix of dread and hope. The Apache's gaze remained steady, unreadable. Morna Graythorn stood like a spider wrapped in black silk, waiting to see which thread would tremble. "I've made my decision," Vera said. "Wonderful," Morna replied, clasping her hands. "And which gentleman will have the honor?" Vera drew in a breath, knowing there would be no turning back. The storm roared outside. Somewhere deep in the house, she thought she heard a woman's laughter. Or maybe sobbing. In this place of secrets and iron, no choice was truly safe. Vera stood in the center of the room, every gaze pressing down on her. The three men leaned forward almost imperceptibly, hollow eyes flickering with something that might have been hope or desperation. Harlan Voss had begun to tremble. His hands bore old scars across the knuckles, defensive wounds, perhaps. Orrin Blackridge worried at his beard, fingers twitching in nervous habit. Micah Rowell sat perfectly still, like prey sensing a predator overhead. Yet behind the emptiness, Vera glimpsed who they once were. Harlan, the sharp-eyed merchant, buried under fear. Oren, the steady cattleman, confidence beaten out of him piece by piece. Micah, the dreamer, once driven to heal, now twisted into silence. They didn't just want her to choose them, they needed it. Why? What did they believe she could give them? Vera's gaze shifted once more to the Apache warrior. He sat unmoving despite the chains, patient, dangerous, unbroken. His broad frame eased the way a predator rests, never weak, only conserving strength. Unlike the men at the table, he studied Vera Langford with eyes that were sharp and fully awake. There was no begging in them, no hollow fear, only a quiet, burning defiance that captivity had failed to smother. The contrast was impossible to miss. Whatever had shattered the three men had not touched him. He remained intact, dangerous, untamed, unbowed. Morna Graythorne noticed where Vera's attention had gone. "Surely you're not weighing that option," she said coolly. "He's barely human, more beast than man. The others would suit you far better." The Apache's jaw hardened at her words, but he gave no outward sign of reaction. His gaze never left Vera, and within it, she caught something unexpected. Curiosity, as though he was measuring her choice. "Tell me," Vera said, turning back to the table, "why should I choose any of you?" The question landed hard. Harlan Voss's mouth opened, then closed again, soundless. Oren Blackridge gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles blanched white. It was Micah Rowell who finally spoke. "Because," he said hoarsely, "we were like you once." He swallowed, words rushing now as if a dam had cracked. "Passing through. Thought we were stopping for one night. We had plans, destinations, people waiting. I was headed to San Francisco," he continued. "Medical college. I had letters. A future." "Micah." Morna's voice cut the air like a lash. He fell silent at once, shrinking back into his chair. But it was already too late. Vera understood. These men were prisoners just as surely as the Apache. Only their chains couldn't be seen. "How long?" Vera asked quietly. "How long have you truly been here?" The men exchanged glances heavy with shared suffering. Harlan lifted a trembling hand, fingers spread. "5, he said softly. "Months, years." The answer was deliberately vague. "They can't speak freely," Vera realized. "Time works differently here," Oren added carefully. "Days feel like years. Years feel like days. Mrs. Graythorne takes very good care of us. We lack for nothing." The lie was painful in its clumsiness. Vera saw the truth in their eyes, not hunger for food, but for freedom, for the lives stripped away, for the simple right to walk out a door unescorted. "And yet you stay," Vera said. "Where would we go?" Harlan whispered. "Our families believe we're dead, businesses lost, property gone. This house is all that's left of us." He shuddered. Cold slid down Vera's spine, and it had nothing to do with the rain. What had Morna Graythorne done to reduce men like this to shadows? Vera's gaze returned to the Apache. If the men were broken horses, he was still wild, still resisting the bit. The chains had bound his body, but his spirit remained untouched. "And him?" Vera asked. "How long has he been here?" Morna's smile thinned. 3 months. He was set to hang for murder. As I said, I intervened, persuaded the marshal that reform was more Christian than execution. She sighed lightly. "Though some souls resist salvation." The Apache's eyes flared, and for the first time, he moved. just a shift of his shoulders, but the chains answered with a heavy rattle. The sound echoed through the room. The three men flinched. "He's strong," Micah blurted out suddenly. "Stronger than any of us." "That's why she keeps him chained," he added, face draining of color. "We only needed chains at first, for a few weeks. Then she didn't anymore." "And then," Vera pressed. Micah said nothing more. He stared at his empty plate as if it held the universe's secrets. Vera stepped closer to the Apache, ignoring Morna's sharp hiss of disapproval. Up close, she studied his restraints. The shackles were heavy iron. Prison issue. The sort meant for men no one intended to trust. But it was the chain itself that drew her focus. Thick links ran from his wrists to a massive ring bolt sunk deep into the floor. He had perhaps 3 feet in any direction, enough to sit, to lie down, but not enough to stand fully or reach beyond his small circle. "Can you speak?" Vera asked quietly. His dark eyes held hers for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "But you choose not to." Another nod, this one accompanied by a brief glance toward Morna Graythorn. It told Vera everything. Words were currency in this house, weapons too, and he had chosen not to give his captor a single one. "Why?" Vera Langford whispered. She turned back toward the room, her thoughts racing now that the shape of it all had come into focus. This place wasn't a boarding house at all. It was a prison dressed up in lace and manners. Morna Graythorn ran it that way by design. The 3 men were bound by something unseen. Fear, drugs, manipulation. Whatever it was, it had hollowed them out. Their chains were inside their heads. The Apache was different. He required iron. But why the performance? Why force women to choose a companion? What did it accomplish? "I need more time before I decide," Vera said aloud. "This arrangement is unusual." She met Morna's pale gaze. "Surely you understand my hesitation. Tror." "What more could you possibly need?" Morna replied, impatience sharpening her voice. "You have 4 choices, each one perfectly safe." "Safe," Orrin Blackridge echoed under his breath, bitterness leaking through. "Yes, very safe." Suddenly Harlan Voss pushed back his chair. The legs scraped loudly across the floor. For an instant, something alive flickered behind his eyes. "Miss Langford," he said urgently. "I was a man of means once. I had a wife, children. I can protect you, care for you. Choose me." "Sit down, Harlan." Morna's voice was calm, but there was iron beneath it. "You're upsetting our guest." Harlan folded in on himself at once, collapsing back into his chair as if his strength had been cut away. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "I didn't mean... I only thought..." "You thought incorrectly," Morna said flatly. She turned back to Vera. "You see how eager they are for company? It's been quite some time since we've hosted a woman here." They grow lonely. Vera didn't buy it. What she had seen in Harlan's eyes wasn't longing. It was desperation. He didn't want companionship. He wanted escape. He believed Vera was something else entirely. An opening. But for what? The Apache made a sound, then, not a laugh, exactly. More like a dry, humorless breath escaping his chest. When Vera looked at him, she caught something unmistakable in his eyes. Approval. He saw it, too. The lie beneath the gentility, the rot behind the rules. "Do you find this amusing?" Morna asked him sharply. He met her stare without blinking. Silent, defiant. "You see what I deal with?" Morna said to Vera. "Utter refusal to cooperate. The others learned that compliance makes life easier. He refuses to learn." "Or maybe," Vera said evenly, "he simply has nothing left to lose." The Apache's eyes snapped to her, sharp, alert. For the first time, Vera felt him truly see her, not as another trapped woman, not as prey, but as something unpredictable. "Everyone has something to lose," Morna said softly. "Everyone." The threat lay naked in her words. Vera's hand drifted almost unconsciously toward her gun. "Oh, you won't need that," Morna said mildly. "This is a respectable house. Violence has no place here." The Apache answered by rattling his chains. Slow, deliberate. "Necessary restraints?" Morna replied coolly. "For an uncivilized man." She straightened her skirts. "Now, Miss Langford, the hour is late. I have responsibilities to attend to." Vera took one last look around the room. 4 men. 3 broken, clinging to her like the last plank from a sinking ship. 1 bound in iron, yet untouched where it mattered. The choice felt impossible. And then Vera understood. The choice itself was the trap. No matter what she chose, Vera Langford knew she would still be stepping onto Morna Graythorne's board. The only real question was which move might buy her the clearest view of the truth, and the best chance to escape it alive. Outside, the storm showed no mercy, sealing them inside this house built on secrets and silence. And somewhere within its walls, Vera was certain lay the answers she needed. She only had to live long enough to find them. "Well," Morna snapped, "have you decided, Miss Langford?" Her patience had worn thin. Vera straightened her shoulders. Whatever came next, she would meet it fully aware. The 3 broken men waited, hope clinging to them like a last breath. The Apache observed her with measured restraint, and Morna stood poised, ready to tighten the snare. "It's time," Vera said quietly. She lifted her chin. "I choose Orrin Blackridge." A flicker crossed Orrin's face, relief tangled tightly with fear. The other 2 men sagged back in their chairs, disappointment carving deep lines into their expressions. The Apache's face gave nothing away, though Vera thought she saw a faint spark in his dark eyes. Recognition, perhaps. "An excellent selection," Morna said, though her tone hinted she had anticipated a different outcome. "Orrin is a proper gentleman. He'll see that you're well looked after tonight." Orrin rose slowly, joints stiff as if his body no longer trusted itself. "Miss Langford," he said, offering a formal bow that seemed to cost him dearly. "Orrin will escort you," Morna continued. "I'll have hot water brought up. Breakfast is served promptly at 7. Don't be late." She turned away, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing, Miss Langford. The house can be confusing after dark. Too many corridors, too many locked doors." She smiled thinly. "It would be wise to remain in your room until morning, for your own safety." The message was unmistakable. Vera nodded. Morna swept from the room, her black skirts whispering like wings of a carrion bird. The air shifted the moment she left. Harlan Voss buried his face in his hands. Micah Rowell began to rock faintly, humming without tune or rhythm. And the Apache, he watched Vera with fierce intensity, as if trying to deliver a warning without sound. "This way," Orrin said, his voice carefully flat. Vera followed him out of the dining room, but not before casting one last look back. The chained warrior raised his bound hands slightly. Not a farewell. A salute. One fighter recognizing another. The hallway lay darker now. Oil lamps turned low. Orrin guided her up a narrow staircase that groaned beneath their weight. The second floor opened into a labyrinth of corridors, doors branching off endlessly, each marked with a small brass number. "Here," Orrin said, stopping at door 7. He drew a key from his vest and unlocked it. The room was modest but tidy. A brass bed dominated the space, covered by a faded quilt. A washstand sat in one corner, a small wardrobe in another. Heavy curtains concealed the lone window. It might have felt welcoming, under different circumstances. Oren shut the door and immediately pressed a finger to his lips. He crossed to the window, checked the curtains, then examined the walls as if expecting them to breathe. Finally, he motioned for Vera to sit on the bed while he pulled the lone chair close. "Thank you for choosing me," he whispered, so softly she had to lean toward him. "The walls hear things here. We must be careful." "There's more you need to know," he added. "Tell me," Vera whispered back. Oren reached inside his boot and withdrew a scrap of paper, torn from something larger, covered in cramped, hurried writing. His hands trembled as he smoothed it flat. "It's a map," he murmured. "Of sorts. This house is bigger than it looks. Or, there are hidden corridors," Oren Blackridge whispered. "Locked rooms, places she believes we've never discovered. Harlan found this in her study months back." Vera Langford examined the rough sketch. It showed the basic outline of the house, but with additions layered over it. Dotted lines marked concealed passageways. X's circled certain rooms. At the bottom, written in hurried scrawl, were 3 words: garden, north corner, stones. "What's in the garden?" Vera asked. Oren's face drained of color. "The others," he said quietly. "The women who came before you. The ones who didn't survive their choices." Cold flooded Vera's veins. "How many?" "We've counted at least 15 markers," Oren replied. "Maybe more. Some are so worn they're nearly gone. This has been happening for years." "And you stayed," Vera said. "Knowing this?" Shame flickered across Oren's features. "You don't understand what she does to us," he said. "What she's capable of. At first, we fought, tried to escape, but she has methods. Drugs that blur the mind, make you forget who you were, and threats. Always threats. Our families, our reputations. She keeps letters we've written, things that would ruin us even if we got away." "What kind of letters?" Vera asked. "Confessions," he said. "Things done while drugged, or things we didn't do but can't remember clearly enough to deny." "She's precise, methodical. By the time you realize the trap, it's already locked shut." Vera felt the weight of the pistol at her hip. "Why not shoot her?" Oren exhaled sharply. "We've considered it. God knows we have. But she's never alone, never exposed. And she has helpers, farmhands who come and go, men who obey without question. Killers," he added softly. "They'd put us in the ground. Or worse, hand us over to the law with all that forged evidence." "What about the Apache?" Vera asked. Oren glanced toward the door, lowering his voice. "He's different. She can't break him the way she broke us. That's why the chains. He killed 3 of her men when they tried to take him. Nearly escaped twice. She keeps him as..." He hesitated. "I don't know. A challenge. A trophy. Proof she can cage even the strongest will. But he has no family to threaten, no reputation to destroy. Just his life. And something else," Oren added. "Pride. Maybe he refuses to give her the satisfaction of watching him fall." A bitter smile crossed Oren's mouth. "It drives her mad. We take comfort in that, small as it is." Vera studied the map again. "These passages, where do they go?" "Different places," Oren replied. "Some lead outside. Those are always locked. Others connect rooms, let her move unseen. That's how she knows everything, hears everything." He leaned closer and tapped a spot on the drawing. "And here, her private study, 2nd floor, east wing. That's where she keeps the drugs, the records. Everything. And the keys. he added quietly. All of them. Vera's breath slowed. Including? Oren swallowed. The key to his chains. We've seen her take it from there when she goes to torment him. Vera's thoughts raced. You're telling me this for a reason. You're different, Oren said urgently. The others who came before, society women, frontier wives, saloon girls, they weren't prepared for someone like Morna Greythorn. But you... We saw it downstairs. The way you questioned her, challenged her. You might be the one who could... Could what? Vera asked. Free us, Oren said. All of us. Or die trying. He grabbed her hands, desperation breaking through. I know it's not fair to put this on you, but we're drowning, Miss Langford. We'll clutch at any rope. Tell me about the others, Vera said. Harlan Voss and Micah Rowell. Oren's voice dropped. Harlan was the first of us three. He's been here over 2 years. He barely remembers who he was before. Sometimes, Oren Blackridge whispered, he talks about his children, but it's like he's describing a dream he once had. Micah Rowell arrived 8 months ago. He still resists now and then, but he's slipping. Soon he'll be like Harlan Voss. Oren's voice dropped, like I'm becoming. And before us, others, he added, men who eventually stopped fighting. She has a way of getting rid of the ones who become too difficult, or too shattered to be useful, makes it appear as though they simply moved on. No one questions a drifter leaving town. Vera Langford paced the small room, her thoughts racing. The Apache, she said. What's his real name? Oren shook his head. We don't know. She wasn't lying about that. He hasn't spoken since the day he arrived, but we've heard the Greythorn riders call him something in Spanish. Gigante. Giant, Vera murmured. It fits, Oren said quietly. Could he help us? Vera asked. Oren hesitated. Maybe, if you could reach him, free him. But that's the trouble. The keys are kept in her study, and she guards them like a dragon guards gold. And even if you got them, he might not trust you. White women haven't given him much reason to. I'll need more than trust, Vera said. I'll need weapons, a plan, help from all of you. We'll do what we can, Oren replied. But understand, we're not what we were. Whatever fight we had left was beaten out of us. We can give information, maybe create a distraction. But if it comes to a real fight... He spread his hands helplessly. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Hot water, came a muffled voice. Oren quickly folded the map and slipped it away, smoothing his vest as he straightened. Come in, he called. A young woman entered carrying a pitcher and basin. She kept her eyes down as she set them on the washstand, then left without a word. Vera noticed the bruises circling her wrists, the vacant fear in her eyes. Another captive, just bound in a different way. When they were alone again, Oren moved toward the door. I should go. She'll expect me back soon. But remember, at breakfast, act as if nothing's changed. Don't let her know you suspect a thing. And whatever you do, he added, don't eat or drink anything she gives you alone. Only what everyone else has. Wait, Vera said. One more thing. Why did you want me to choose you? A sad smile crossed his face. Because there's still enough of me left to help. And because I knew I wouldn't hurt you. Some choices in this house are worse than others, he said quietly. Some lead to rooms you never leave. He opened the door, then paused. The storm should break by morning. If you make it that far, if you find a way... Please, he said softly, don't forget us. Then he was gone. Vera sat alone with the weight of everything she'd learned. Outside, the wind howled like a living creature, clawing at the walls, trapping them inside this place of quiet horrors. She lowered herself onto the bed, her thoughts spinning. 15 women buried in the garden. 3 men trapped by invisible chains. 1 Apache warrior bound in iron. And at the center of it all, a widow in black who had turned kindness into a weapon. Vera checked her revolver. 6 rounds. Not nearly enough. She needed more than bullets. She needed wit, allies, and luck, most of all. She needed those keys. Vera waited until the house settled into uneasy silence. The storm still raged, but the creak of floorboards and distant footsteps faded away. She reviewed Oren's map again in her mind, memorizing every line before hiding it in her boot. The house was far more complex than it appeared, honeycombed with hidden routes, some marked as blocked, others dangerous. She eased her door open, grateful Oren had left it unlocked. The corridor stretched both ways, dimly lit by a single oil lamp at the far end. According to the map, Morna Graythorn's study lay in the east wing. 2 turns. Then a narrow service stair. Vera slipped off her boots, tied them together, and slung them over her shoulder. Then she moved barefoot into the dark. Every plank whispered beneath her careful steps. Every pocket of darkness felt like it might be watching her breathe. One hand stayed near her revolver, though she knew a single shot would wake the entire house. The first corner opened onto another hallway, this one lined with portraits. Painted faces followed her progress, eyes dulled by time. Former guests, or something worse. One canvas stopped her cold. A young woman in a white wedding gown stared out, her smile strained, eyes hollow. A brass plate beneath the frame read, Lydia Graythorn, 1847, 1869, Morna Graythorn's daughter. The dates told the rest of the story. 22 at most. Vera swallowed and moved on. The service stair hid behind what looked like a linen closet. Narrow, steep. Built for servants hauling burdens, not guests sneaking through the night. She tested each step before trusting it, easing upward without a sound. The east wing lay deeper in shadow than the rest of the house. Only thin moonlight spilled through a window at the far end, barely enough to see. Vera counted doors. 3 on the left, 4 on the right. According to Oren Blackridge, the study was the 3rd on the right. She tried the handle. Locked. Of course, she dropped to one knee, inspecting the mechanism. Quality work, but nothing unbeatable. A hairpin slipped from her bun. Old lessons from a traveling locksmith who'd once tried to win her over came back to her fingers. A soft click, then another. The door eased open. The study was exactly what she expected from Morna Graythorn. Order pushed to obsession. Filing cabinets filled one wall. A heavy desk anchored the center of the room. Shelves held bottles and instruments that made Vera's stomach tighten. Laudanum, ether, other chemicals she didn't care to name. The air carried their bitter scent. She went straight to the desk. The drawers were locked, but the pin worked again. Inside, ledgers, letters, and photographs. Dozens of them. Women. Everyone wearing the same empty stare she'd seen on the girl who carried the hot water. Names and dates were scrawled on the backs. The most recent, Margaret Sullivan. October 1899, disposed. Vera's hands trembled. Such a clean word for murder. Another drawer held keys, many of them, looped on iron rings with small tags. Room keys, cellar keys, stable keys, but not the one she needed. Panic pricked her spine as seconds slipped away. Then she saw it. A narrow cabinet tucked behind the desk, nearly hidden by a curtain. Inside, hanging alone on a hook, was a heavy iron key with unmistakable teeth. The tag read simply, Apache. Vera slipped it into her pocket. Then she noticed something else. A leather-bound journal, worn soft by use. She opened it at random, and wished she hadn't. Clinical notes, experiments, dosages, reactions, behavioral conditioning, the subjects were listed by initials, but she recognized them immediately. HV, Harlan Voss, OB, Orrin Blackridge. The entries described a deliberate breaking of the mind. Drugs, isolation, threats, coercion, and worse. One passage made her blood run cold. Subject A, Apache. Continues to resist all methods. Chemical intervention increases aggression without compliance. Physical restraints remain necessary. Note: possible natural immunity or exceptional will, further observation required. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Vera snapped the journal shut, slid the drawers closed, and turned toward the window. Too far to drop. Iron bars sealed it anyway. The steps stopped at the door. She pressed herself against the wall just as it opened. Morna Graythorne entered, lamp in hand. She moved straight for the desk. Vera held her breath, revolver raised but useless for now. Not yet. Not until the others were free. Morna Graythorne set the lamp down and opened the journal Vera Langford had been reading only moments before. She added several neat lines of ink, then crossed to the medicine cabinet. As she chose bottles, she spoke aloud, as if taking notes for no one but herself. Increased agitation. Resistance observed in subject MR, double the evening dose. She paused, selected another vial. Subject HV nearing total collapse. May require disposal soon. A pity. He was useful for maintaining appearances. Vera's finger tightened on the trigger. The woman spoke of human beings as if they were livestock, losses in some grotesque experiment. But firing now would doom everyone still trapped inside. The riders who came and went at Morna's command, the locked doors, and Thar, still bound in iron. Too many risks. Morna finished arranging the bottles and turned towards the door. She stopped, lifted her head, and sniffed the air. "Wet leather," she murmured. "How odd." Vera's pulse thundered, her rain-soaked gun belt. The scent must have lingered. Morna stood motionless for a long breath. Then she dismissed the thought with a shrug and left, pulling the door closed behind her. Vera counted to 100 before stepping from the shadows. She had to move. Now, if Morna suspected anything, time was already running thin. Vera slipped back through the house, avoiding the main corridors. The map showed a narrow passage that led close to the garden. She found the concealed panel hidden behind a bookshelf and slid through. The passage was tight and choking with dust, cobwebs clinging to her sleeves. She stooped beneath the low ceiling until it ended at a door that opened onto a covered porch overlooking the grounds. The rain had softened to a mist, though the wind still roared. Vera pulled on her boots and stepped outside. The garden lay before her, wild, untended. In the broken moonlight, she saw them. Stone markers scattered among the weeds. Some were proper headstones. Others were nothing more than rough rocks with hurried initials scratched into them. She moved slowly, reading what she could. Idtoti P. 1891. ML. 1894. Unknown. 1897. Each stone marked a woman who had made a choice in that dining room, and learned too late what kind of house she had entered. In the north corner, just as Orrin Blackridge had said, the stones were older, worn nearly smooth. Vera knelt beside one larger than the rest, carved with care. The inscription was faint but readable. Lydia Graythorne, beloved daughter. May she find the peace denied her in life, so the woman in the portrait was Morna's daughter. What had she tried to stop? And how had her death fed this place? A sound made Vera whirl, hand snapping to her gun. A figure stood at the edge of the garden, barely visible in shadow. For a breathless instant, Vera thought it was Morna. Then the figure stepped into moonlight. It was the serving girl from earlier, wrapped in a thin shawl. Fear trembled through her, but so did resolve. "Miss," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here. She'll know. She always knows." "Who are you?" Vera asked. "Bryn Hollowell," the girl said. "I work the kitchen. Been here 2 years, since my parents died. Had nowhere else to go." "Bryn, what happened to Lydia Graythorne?" The girl glanced around, voice dropping. "They say she took her own life. Couldn't stand what her mother became." She leaned closer. Or maybe she tried to stop her. Either way, she was dead, and Morna only grew worse after. Like losing her daughter shattered whatever good she had left. "These graves," Vera said softly. "You knew some of them?" Bryn nodded, tears streaking her face. "Helped bury them, at night. She makes us do it. She says fever, accidents, but we know better." Her voice broke. "They died for knowing too much, for fighting back, for trying to run." "Help me," Vera said urgently. "Help me end this," Vera said. "I can't," Bryn Hollowell whispered. "She'd kill me, or worse. She'd hand me over to one of them as a reward. That's what happens to servant girls who cross her." "Then tell me this," Vera pressed. "Is there another way to reach the Apache? Somewhere that isn't the dining room?" Bryn chewed her lip, torn. At last she pointed toward a low cellar door set into the stone foundation. "That way. It connects to the main cellar. He's kept in a reinforced room off the wine storage. But miss, even if you free him, what then? He's one man against her guards. And he doesn't speak English, far as anyone knows." "Leave that to me," Vera said. "You should go, before you're missed." Bryn seized Vera's hand. "If you fail, she'll make an example of you. Something terrible. Something none of us will forget. That's how she rules. Fear and examples." "I won't fail," Vera said, sounding steadier than she felt. Bryn squeezed her hand once, then vanished back into the house. Vera watched her go and turned to the cellar door. The iron key felt heavy in her pocket. Time to see whether an Apache warrior would accept the strangest of allies. The door groaned open, revealing stone steps sinking into blackness. Vera drew a breath and descended, leaving the Garden of the Dead behind. Ahead lay either deliverance or another marker among the stones. She had chosen the moment she picked that lock. There was no turning back. The cellar swallowed sound and light. She traced damp walls with her fingers, moving by instinct. The air smelled of earth and wine, layered with something fouler, the musk of fear and captivity. She struck a match. Its brief flare showed a narrow corridor lined with wine racks, most empty, the rest holding dust-caked bottles. At the far end stood a heavier door, reinforced with iron bands. The flame died. Vera lit another match and advanced, memorizing the turns. Scratches scarred the stone, pleas and tallies left by the trapped. God help us. Mother, forgive me. Day 27. Each mark was a confession of suffering. The reinforced door held a small barred window. She peered through and saw only darkness. She slid the iron key into the lock. It turned easily, as if freshly oiled. The door opened without a sound. Her last match flared. Thar sat against the far wall. Chains pooled at his feet. Even in the dim light, his body was coiled and ready. The fire caught in his eyes and flashed back like a predator's. "I'm here to help," Vera whispered, trusting her tone to carry what words might not. He watched her approach, neither welcoming nor hostile, measuring. She knelt, lifted the key so he could see it, and reached for the shackles. He did not move, but the power in him was palpable, like standing beside a loaded cannon. The first shackle fell away, leaving a dark ring where iron had bitten flesh. The second opened. His hands were free. Vera went to the ankle chains, keenly aware that he could crush her in an instant. He waited, patient as stone. When the last link dropped, he rose slowly, stretching to his full height. Vera stepped back. He was even larger standing, well over 6 feet, shoulders filling the cell. He looked down at her, and something crossed his face. Not gratitude, but recognition. "Can you understand me?" she asked softly. He nodded once. "Can you speak?" He touched his throat, then shook his head. By choice or injury, she could not tell. "We have to move," Vera said. Footsteps echoed above, many of them fast. Voices spilled down the stair. Morna Greythorn's cold precision layered over rougher men's tones. Armed Greythorn riders. Thar moved with startling speed, placing himself between Vera and the door, fists clenched. She caught his arm. "No, too many. There's another way." She pictured the map, passages threading the cellar, some leading out. But which? The steps were on the cellar stairs now. Morna's voice cut through the dark. Thar made his choice. He took Vera's hand and pulled her deeper into the cellar, past his cell and into the maze beyond the wine racks, where the shadows thickened and the paths forked. He had been watching all along. Vera realized it now. Chains or not, Thar had studied his captors, memorized their habits, learned the shape of the place, and waited for a moment exactly like this. They ran through twisting corridors, the sounds of pursuit closing fast. Thar moved like a shadow despite his size, barely making a sound. Vera struggled to keep pace, her skirts snagging on splintered beams and rough stone, each stumble stealing precious seconds. They burst into a wider chamber cluttered with broken furniture and old traveling trunks. Moonlight slipped in through a ground-level window, illuminating boots passing outside. They were boxed in. "In here!" Morna Greythorn's voice echoed through the cellar. "The savage and the woman. Bring them to me alive if you can, but don't hesitate to shoot." Vera drew her revolver and checked the cylinder. 6 shots. Against how many men? Thar noticed the gun and extended his hand. She hesitated, then placed it in his palm. He inspected it with practiced ease, nodded once, then returned it to her. Warrior to warrior. Acknowledgement. The door crashed open. 2 men rushed in with rifles raised. Thar crossed the distance in a blur, wrenching the first rifle free and smashing it sideways like a club. The man dropped hard. The second tried to aim, but Vera fired first, the shot tearing into his shoulder. He screamed, dropped his weapon, and fled. More men poured in. Thar fought with ruthless precision, wielding the stolen rifle with raw strength. Vera fired twice more, aiming to cripple, not kill, but there were too many. "Enough!" Morna Greythorn stepped into the doorway. Vera's blood turned to ice. The widow held a small glass syringe filled with a clear liquid, her hand steady. "One more move," Morna said calmly, "and I inject her with enough laudanum to stop her heart." Everything froze. Thar stood with the rifle trained on Morna, but Vera saw the calculation in his eyes. Could he fire before the needle struck? The margin was impossibly thin. "Drop the weapons," Morna ordered. "Both of you." Vera let her revolver fall. After a long moment, Thar lowered the rifle as well. "Good," Morna said softly, that cold smile returning. "Did you truly think I wouldn't notice? The scent of wet leather in my study, the disturbed dust, the missing key?" She stepped closer, the syringe never wavering. I've survived in this house for 20 years by noticing everything. Her gaze fixed on Vera. You fascinate me. You could have chosen comfort. A warm bed, good food, the illusion of safety. Instead, you chose hardship. Why? Because some prices are too high, Vera said. Spoken like someone who's never been truly desperate, Morna replied, eyes glittering. You've never lost everything, never watched your world burn and rebuilt from ashes. Your daughter, Vera said quietly. Morna's face twisted. Do not speak of her. You know nothing of loss, Morna hissed, of what a mother endures when her child is taken. So you take other people's daughters, Vera shot back. I give purpose to the purposeless, Morna said coldly. Direction to the lost. Everyone in this house serves a function, plays a role in something greater. You mean your experiments, Vera said. Your control. Morna smiled again. My research. Human behavior fascinates me. What breaks one person strengthens another. What shatters the mind. What preserves it. What transforms it. This house is my laboratory. She gestured toward Thar. Even him. He serves a purpose. He shows me the limits of human will. 3 months, and he hasn't broken. Remarkable. Thar's jaw tightened, but he did not move. And now, Morna continued, you've disrupted my balance, but perhaps that too has value. Perhaps you're meant to be my finest experiment yet. She raised the syringe. Shall we begin? Vera tensed, ready to dive. And then Thar spoke. Thar. His voice was rough, scraped raw by disuse, but unmistakably clear. My name is Thar. Morna turned in shock. It lasted only a heartbeat, but it was enough. Vera lunged forward, slamming into Morna's arm. The syringe flew from her hand and shattered against the stone floor, the clear liquid bleeding into the cracks. The widow shrieked in fury and tore a derringer from the folds of her dress, but Thar was already in motion. He seized her wrist, wrenching it upward as the weapon discharged into the ceiling, the shot harmless. Hold her, Vera Langford said, reclaiming her revolver. Thar twisted Morna Graythorn's arms behind her back and pinned her there. She fought, clawing and spitting, but against his strength she was powerless, reduced to furious breath and hate-filled eyes. You think you've won, Morna hissed. You think killing me will free them? They're broken beyond repair. They'll die without their treatments, without order. I'm the only thing keeping them alive. We'll see, Vera said. She met Thar's gaze. Can you secure her? He nodded and spoke again, carefully choosing each word. Iron, chains, justice. Vera understood. Morna would be bound as she had bound others, but first there were riders to deal with, prisoners to free, and truths to untangle from the widow's poison. The footsteps above had stopped. Either the Graythorn riders had fled, or were regrouping. Vera checked her revolver. 2 rounds left, not much, but enough. The keys, Vera said sharply. All of them. Where are they? Morna laughed, bitter and hollow. Why would I tell you? Thar tightened his grip just enough. Morna gasped. Behind the medical cabinet, she snapped. Hidden panel, but it won't matter. You can't undo what I've done. You can't save what I've already destroyed. Vera looked to Thar. No words were needed. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The woman who had come seeking shelter and the warrior who had refused to break. Watch her, Vera said. I'll get the others. She turned for the stairs, ready to free Harlan Voss, Orrin Blackridge, and Micah Rowell, ready to tear down Morna Graythorn's careful machinery of fear and return choice to those it had been stolen from. Behind her, Thar spoke once more, his voice low and heavy as stone. No more chains. Vera emerged into a house already unraveling. The riders were gone, deciding, perhaps, that their pay wasn't worth facing an armed woman and a freed Apache warrior. But the three men stood in the hallway like lost boys. Confusion and terror warred across their faces. "What's happening?" Oren asked, his voice shaking. "We heard gunshots, screaming." "It's over," Vera said. "Morna Graythorn is captured. You're free!" The word shattered something inside Harlan Voss. He slid down the wall, sobbing. "Free," he whispered. "I don't even know what that means anymore. She's in our heads, in our blood." "We'll figure it out," Vera said firmly. "But first, we secure the house." Micah stepped forward, a flicker of his old self returning. "The medical supplies. If we're withdrawing from her drugs, it has to be gradual. I remember enough from my training. I was going to be a doctor." "You still can be," Vera said. She turned to Oren. "Check on the servants. Make sure they're safe." Oren nodded, straighter now that he had purpose. "Bryn Hollowell and the others will be hiding in the kitchen quarters. They always do when trouble starts." Heavy footsteps sounded on the cellar stairs. Thar emerged, Morna slung over his shoulder like a sack of grain. Her wrists were bound with strips torn from her own dress. She was silent now, watchful, calculating. The three men shrank back at the sight of him. Months of lies had left their mark. Thar set Morna into a chair and looked at them, not with rage, but with something close to pity. "He's not what she told you," Vera said quietly. "His name is Thar. He was a prisoner, too." "Worse," Thar said, his voice still rough. "You had rooms. I had chains." Morna laughed, thin and broken. "Look at you all. Freedom. You think you've won, but you're already dying." "Harlan," Morna Graythorn said coldly, "when was the last day you went without your tincture? Oren, do you even remember your wife's name? And Micah? Poor, broken Micah. You're already shaking from need." She was right. Vera Langford could see it clearly now. The tremor in their hands, the sheen of sweat on their foreheads despite the cool night air. Whatever Morna had been feeding them had sunk its hooks deep into muscle and mind. "Where are the medical records?" Vera demanded. "The real ones, not the lies you showed me." "Why would I help you?" Morna sneered. Thar stepped closer. He didn't threaten her. He didn't touch her. But his presence alone was enough. Morna's composure fractured, just slightly. "The safe," she said tightly. "Behind Lydia's portrait in my study. The combination is her death date, March 15th, 69. Vera left Morna under Thar's watch and returned to the study. The portrait of the young woman in a wedding dress seemed to follow her with sad eyes as she swung it aside. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were stacks of journals, loose papers, and rows of small glass vials. Vera gathered everything and hurried back. The group had grown. Oren had brought Bryn Hollowell and two other servant girls, Tessa Klein, an Irish girl no more than 16, and Edith Moorlane, older, her hair prematurely gray. They huddled together, frightened but clinging to hope. "Micah," Vera said, handing him the journals. "Can you make sense of these?" He opened one with shaking hands, then read, his face draining of color. "Laudanum, yes," he said hoarsely, "but mixed with other substances. Cocaine for stimulation, morphine for compliance, and, God, experimental compounds. She's been testing unproven drugs on all of us." He looked up. "I might be able to help them withdraw, safely." "Can you?" Vera pressed. "Maybe," Micah said. "I'll need time, careful calculations, gradual reduction." He glanced at Harlan and Oren. "It won't be easy, and it may not work. Some of these combinations, I've never seen anything like them." "We have to try," Oren said. His voice trembled. I want to remember my wife's name. I want my life back." Morna laughed softly. "Touching. But you're forgetting something. This house doesn't exist alone. I have associates, people who benefit from my work." "Then they'll learn," Vera cut in, "that a woman who drugged and murdered travelers has been brought to justice." "Unless," Vera added evenly, "you'd prefer we uncover those graves in the garden and let families identify their daughters." Morna's face went white. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." Bryn stepped forward, startling everyone. "I know where she keeps the letters. Correspondence from people who sent troublesome relatives here, who paid to have them changed." "Politicians," Bryn continued. "Businessmen. Even judges." "You little fool," Morna hissed. "Not anymore," Bryn said, chin lifting. "You killed my friend Marin Pike. Said she ran off. But she's in that garden, isn't she?" Morna said nothing. Her silence answered everything. "Get the letters," Vera told Bryn. "All of them. We'll need evidence for the authorities." As Bryn hurried away, Vera turned to the others. "Here's what we're doing. Micah handles the medical withdrawal. Oren, you and Harlan secure the house. Lock exits. Gather weapons." She looked to Thar. "You and I will take Morna to the root cellar. It locks from the outside, correct?" Oren nodded. "Like a jail cell. She used it to punish servants." "Fitting," Vera said. She faced Morna. "You'll wait there while we send for Marshal Keaton Crow. You'll answer for what you've done." "And if I refuse?" Morna sneered. "You won't," Thar said quietly. Something in his tone ended the question. As they moved to escort her, Micah suddenly grabbed Vera's arm. "Wait, there's something else." Morna stiffened. "Don't." But Micah read aloud from a faded journal. Lydia discovered what her mother was doing. She tried to stop her, tried to free the prisoners. "Morna, you had your own daughter committed, declared her insane, had her locked away." Morna shook her head, lips trembling. "She didn't kill herself," Micah continued. "She died in an asylum, alone, forgotten." Silence crushed the room. Even Thar looked stunned. "She betrayed me," Morna whispered, her voice breaking. "My own blood, my only child. She chose strangers over her mother." "She would have destroyed everything I built," Morna Graythorn said hoarsely. "Everything I clawed together after her father died and left us with nothing. I did what I had to do." "You killed her," Vera Langford said quietly. "Maybe not with your own hands, but you killed her all the same." "I saved her," Morna screamed. "She was weak, foolish. She couldn't grasp the greater purpose. In the asylum, at least, she was safe, from her own worthless conscience." Harlan Voss spoke for the first time in long minutes. "That's why you do this. You're trying to create perfect subjects, perfect prisoners. The daughter who would never betray you. You understand nothing," Morna spat. Yet tears streamed down her face now, the first real emotion Vera had seen. "Nothing." "Take her away," Vera said to Thar. "I can't look at her anymore." As Thar led the widow towards the cellar, Morna twisted back and shouted, "You think you've saved them, but you've doomed them. Without me, without my treatments, they'll die or go mad. Their blood is on your hands now." When she was gone, silence settled heavily over the room. The three men looked worse by the minute, hands shaking, sweat pouring from their faces. "We need to start immediately," Micah Rowell said. "Small stabilizing doses to prevent seizures. Then gradual reduction, carefully. This could take weeks, months." "We'll get help," Vera said. "The storm's breaking. At first light, I ride to town. Bring Marshal Keaton Crow and a real doctor. You keep them stable until I'm back." Bryn Hollowell returned with an armful of letters. "There's more," she said breathlessly. "Years of it. Payments, threats, names. She kept everything." "Good," Vera said. "That's her real prison, her own records. She documented every crime." Oren Blackridge laughed, a cracked, disbelieving sound. "We're free," he said. "After all this time, we're actually free." "Not yet," Harlan said softly. "Not until the poison is out of us. Not until we can walk out that door without fear." "But it's a start," Oren said. Vera looked around the room. 3 broken men beginning to hope, servant girls realizing their bondage had ended, and somewhere below, a warrior standing watch over the woman who had tried to break him. "It's more than a start," Vera said. "It's a choice, the first real one you've had in years. What you do with it, that's yours." Outside, the storm was finally dying. Dawn crept closer, pale and cautious, carrying the fragile promise of rebuilding lives torn apart by one woman's twisted grief. First, they had to survive the night, and the long road of healing ahead. In the cellar, Thar stood guard over Morna Greythorn, now bound in the same chains that had once held him. He did not gloat. He did not speak. He simply ensured she would never harm another soul. Justice, he had learned, came in many forms. Sometimes it wore a badge and carried a law book. Sometimes it looked like a woman with a gun and the courage to pick a lock, and sometimes it was as simple as chains changing hands. Dawn broke gray and hesitant over the Kansas prairie. Vera saddled Ashwind, the mare restless to leave this place behind. The air was clean now, sharp after the storm. In her saddlebags lay Morna Greythorn's records and a sworn statement signed by every survivor. 3 hours to town, Vera told the group gathered on the porch. Maybe longer if the roads are washed out. Can you hold things together? Micah, pale but focused, nodded. I've calculated the dosages. We have enough to keep everyone stable until you return. Harlan and Oren stood beside him, already straighter, stronger with purpose. Bryn Hollowell, Tessa Klein, and Edith Moorlane had taken charge of the house, organizing supplies, preparing food for the hard days ahead. And her? Oren asked quietly, glancing toward the cellar. Thar will keep watch, Vera said. He volunteered. They had offered to take turns. The Apache warrior had only shaken his head. My task, he had said. My choice. Vera Langford understood. After months of chains and silence, standing watch over his captor was its own kind of justice. She mounted Ashwind and looked back once more. In daylight, the house seemed smaller. Wood, stone, glass. Ordinary. The terror had lived in the woman inside, and in the power they had all surrendered to fear. Go, Bryn Hollowell said. We'll be all right. Vera urged Ashwind into a gallop, racing the rising sun toward town. The territorial marshal, a weathered man named Marshal Keaton Crow, heard Vera's account with disbelief that hardened into anger. The evidence finished the argument. Morna Greythorn's meticulous records laid out a pattern of abuse no skeptic could deny. 20 years, the marshal muttered, paging through the files. 20 years under our noses. How many missing folks? He shook his head. God Almighty. He raised a posse at once. 6 men, a doctor, and Judge Rourke Halden, who had ridden circuit through the region for years. They loaded a wagon with medical supplies and set out, Vera leading the way. This Greythorn woman, the judge asked as they rode. She kept names? Payments? Everything, Vera said. Dates, amounts, who sent whom. She wrote it all down. The judge's jaw set. There will be a reckoning. This reaches beyond one mad widow. Let it, the marshal said. Justice delayed is still justice. They returned to the property to an unexpected sight in the garden. Thar worked alone, carefully uncovering the unmarked graves. He laid the remains out with care, covering them with clean sheets taken from the house. Rough wooden markers stood nearby, waiting for names. He insisted, Bryn explained. Said they deserved recognition, a proper resting. He's been at it since you left. Vera found Thar kneeling beside a small skeleton, brushing earth from fragile bones. A child. Unmarked, forgotten, until now. How many? She asked softly. 17, he said. So far, more deeper. Older. Marshal Crowe approached, then stopped short at the neat rows. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Begging your pardon, but sweet Jesus. Every one of them was someone's daughter, Vera said. Sister, wife, some we may never identify. The marshal's face hardened. Where is she? They brought Morna Graythorn up from the cellar in the same chains that had once bound Thar. She squinted in the sunlight, her black dress rumpled and stained, dignity in tatters, but the calculating light remained in her eyes. Marshal Crowe, she said evenly, I demand counsel. You'll get it, he replied. In town, after we document every grave and every crime in your ledgers. The doctor began at once, confirming Micah Rowell's assessment. Withdrawal will be hard, he told Vera, but manageable. The young man did well stabilizing them. With proper care, they should recover. Physically? Vera asked. Mentally? The doctor's expression sobered. Time will tell. The mind heals, but scars remain. They'll need support. Purpose. As preparations were made to transport Graythorn, she tried once more to reclaim control. You don't understand what you're destroying. My methods, my research, could have transformed the treatment of criminal minds. I was close. You were torturing people, Vera said flatly. Murdering them. That isn't research. That's evil wearing a scholar's coat. Graythorn's composure finally fractured. They were nothing, she hissed. Drifters, failures. I gave their lives meaning. Like your daughters? Vera asked quietly. Was Lydia Graythorn's life meaningless too? Silence answered. It took 2 days to process the property. Each body was exhumed, documented, and prepared for burial. The house was searched from cellar to rafters, an attic laboratory where Graythorn mixed her drugs, rooms with restraints set into the walls, journals stretching back to the weeks after Lydia's death, charting a descent into obsession and murder. Harlan Voss, Orrin Blackridge, and Micah Rowell began the long work of recovery. Hands steadier, eyes clearer, purpose returning by degrees, as the truth was carried down the road toward judgment. They chose to remain through the investigation, standing as living proof of what they had endured. The withdrawals were brutal to witness, shaking bodies, fevered nights, whispered prayers. But they held on, leaning on one another when the pain crested. I remember her name, Orrin Blackridge said on the second night, tears streaking his face. Martha. My wife's name was Martha. Red hair, green eyes. She laughed like bells. Hold on to that, Vera Langford told him quietly. Every memory that comes back, it belongs to you again. The serving girls were offered positions in town, but Bryn Hollowell had a different vision. Someone should keep the house, she said. Not like before. Make it what it always pretended to be, a real refuge for travelers, a place of healing, not harm. That's a heavy burden, Vera warned. We're not afraid of work, Edith Morlane said, and maybe turning something evil into something good is how we heal too. On the third morning, as wagons were readied to take Morna Graythorn and the evidence to town, Thar approached Vera. He had traded his torn tribal clothing for plain frontier wear, yet he still moved with the quiet authority of a warrior. You go now, he said. It was not a question. My aunt in Dodge City is waiting, Vera replied. She hesitated. And you? Where will you go? Thar looked out across the prairie, then back towards the house. Stay, for now. Help them. He nodded toward Bryn and the others. Garden needs care. Graves need names. Truth needs witness. The marshal says there's no warrant on you, Vera said. Whatever Graythorn claimed, I killed 3 of her men, Thar said evenly. Self-defense. Law does not always see difference for Apache. Judge Rourke Halden will make sure it's written properly, Vera said. You're free. Free, he repeated, testing the word. Strange, but good. He offered his hand. Thank you, Vera Langford. She took it, feeling the strength that had refused to bend. Thank you, Thar, for not breaking, for showing them resistance was possible. We all resist in our ways, he said. You picked locks, I kept silence. As the convoy prepared to depart, Vera walked once more through the garden. The graves now bore simple wooden crosses, waiting for stone markers. Wildflowers had been planted around each, life pushing through sorrow. She paused at Lydia Graythorn's stone, the daughter who had tried to stop the horror and paid the price. Vera laid prairie blossoms at its base. You tried, she whispered. That mattered. The sun climbed, burning away the last of the night's shadows. It was time. Vera mounted Ashwind and joined the wagons rolling toward town. Behind her, the house no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a promise. Harlan Voss, Orrin Blackridge, and Micah Rowell would testify. The serving girls would rebuild. Thar would tend the garden of remembrance, and far-off families would finally learn the truth about those they had lost. She touched the small knife hidden in her boot, a gift from Thar, who had said every woman traveling alone should carry steel. But Vera knew the sharpest weapon wasn't the blade. It was choice. The choice to resist, to act despite fear, to help others when it would be easier to ride away. The prairie stretched wide and endless. Dodge City waited. Vera pressed her heels to Ashwind's sides and rode on, knowing that the greatest journeys were not measured by miles, but by the courage to open locked doors and free those trapped behind them. In her saddlebag lay Graythorn's journals and a freshly carved sign Bryn had made. Graythorn House, under new management shelter and rest for all travelers. No chains, no conditions. It would hang where the old sign once creaked, a promise that a house of horrors had become a house of hope. And Vera Langford, who had sought nothing more than shelter from a storm, rode away knowing she had helped end a far darker tempest, the storm of human cruelty, broken at last by human courage. The prairie wind sang of freedom, and she rode with its song. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure, but every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.